What's going on, guys? This video is going to be about the replacement of my clock spring for my quill handle. It's a return spring that not necessarily returns the quill handle to the upper position, but really the main goal for the clock spring inside these handles is to balance the quill and to keep it from freewheeling down or even returning back up. So theoretically, you should be able to position this handle anywhere and everything stay pretty much exactly where it's at. Now, just to give you an example, there it is, kind of freewheeling down on me if I don't set the tension on this quill lock here. And it really doesn't take a whole lot of tension, but that spring should remove that possibility no matter how loose this is. So just a little bit of background here. This is a used mill. It's made, or used to be made, by Clausing. It's called Kondia. It's a power mill. And it is an import and more or less a Bridgeport clone. But that being said, since they don't make this mill anymore, it's really hard to find direct replacement parts for it. Now you can find one or two things here or there, and some are maybe a little bit more expensive than others due to, I guess, the rarity of this mill. But that being said, because it is a Bridgeport clone, I found that a couple parts here or there are more or less directly interchangeable from the selection of Bridgeport replacement parts, which you can get just about anything for nowadays. So what I ended up doing, I have had this apart just to see if there was still a spring in there that could possibly be repaired. I thought maybe the pin might have just come loose, or the very end of the spring split open. And sometimes you can cut the bad part of the spring off, reattach it, and continue using it. But when I opened it up recently, it turns out that somebody had already replaced the spring, or rather taken it out some time ago. So this is all that was left. You had a couple pieces that had kind of finally broken off, and then finally the outside piece of the spring with a keyhole that hooks onto a pin on the assembly cup there, which we'll show in more detail soon. But the way that a lot of these springs used to be made is that there was a pin on the outside for the outer end of the spring, and then a pin on the inside of the spindle that drives the quill up and down on the inside. And it used to be that you could just order a replacement spring like this with a keyhole on both ends. It looks like at some point years ago, Bridgeport, as well as the rest of the clones, kind of went to a new spring assembly that instead of using a pin on the outside here, they just fold the end over. So really the only replacement springs I could find immediately available were ones that fit this type of assembly. So I kind of took my chances based on some rough measurements I found for these, and ordered a replacement for a Bridgeport, and hopefully it'll be roughly the same size, or at least close enough that either A, we can use it, or we can modify it slightly to be used. Now the other option, if it's way off, is to modify this existing cup inside there and pull this spring out and just swap places with it. So we're going to go ahead and set the camera up on the tripod here. I'll show you guys how this all comes apart, and then we'll assess what we have and see if we have a direct replacement or if we need to do a little bit of work on one or the other. So let's go ahead and hook this up into my tripod here. And I'll show you quickly the disassembly process. First, we'll make sure we're all the way up. We'll lock our quill, and we'll remove the set screw for the lever handle. And then we have a keeper screw on the outside of this collar here. And set that aside, and then this just pulls out. Now there is a keyway that keeps this indexed on the spindle here. Do be careful that that doesn't get lost. We're actually going to pull that out of there, just because I know it will fall out sooner or later, so we'll set that aside. And we grab a wrench and we'll take the outer bolts that are holding this cup in place. I think on a Bridgeport these are actually screws, most import mills. I don't know if these are original to the machine or if they were drilled and tapped later. Maybe a screw got stripped out or what have you. And then we'll take a small pry bar, just slide this out of here. Pretty tight friction fit there. Alright, this is our original assembly. You can see the pin on the outside where the original spring kind of clipped into place. Let's go ahead and take this out of the tripod again. Alright, I'm going to reposition the camera here where we can get a little better angle at this. Again, you can see the pin on the outside that locked into that keyhole we saw on the remaining piece of that spring earlier. And here's the newer assembly. As I said, where instead of the pin they just fold the end of the spring.